You could feel it before you had words for it. That invisible flicker behind their eyes when you didn't do what they expected. The pause, the disapproval, the withdrawal of warmth, and so you adjusted, you contorted, you smiled when you didn't want to. You stayed quiet when you knew the truth. And every time you did, something in you died. Approval became survival, and survival became your god. Now you call it being nice, being professional, being smart about it. But deep down, you know when you sold a piece of your soul just to stay accepted by people who don't even know themselves. This is how the devil works, not with fire and horns, but with fear of rejection, with your obsession to be liked, with your addiction to validation. You are not lazy. You are not lost. You are not weak. You are possessed by the ghosts of other people's opinions. You've spent your life trying to become someone they would applaud. And in doing so, you abandon the one voice that could have set you free, your own. This message isn't about rebellion. It's about remembering. Because until you stop seeking their approval, you will never approve of yourself. And if you don't approve of yourself, you will always obey. There's a kind of pain that doesn't scream. It lingers in the silence after you say what you think and someone looks away. It shows up when you tell the truth and feel punished for it. It lives in the pit of your stomach when you walk into a room and forget who you are because you're too busy trying to guess what they want you to be. This is not shyness. This is not politeness. This is spiritual anesthesia. And it is the devil's favorite trick, not because it wounds you loudly, but because it teaches you to wound yourself quietly, again and again. In the name of fitting in, you were not born afraid to be yourself. You were trained to be. And that training was so subtle, so smooth, so consistent, that you didn't even notice when it began. It came in the form of be good, don't talk back. That's not how girls act. Boys don't cry. Stop showing off. People are looking. Don't embarrass us. You heard those words. You felt their weight. And you internalized the same equation. Authenticity equals rejection. Obedience equals safety. From that moment on, your nervous system began playing a deadly game. Not with knives or violence, but with adaptation. You smiled when you wanted to scream. You nodded when you didn't agree. You laughed at jokes that made your skin crawl. Why? Because the moment you sensed approval could be withdrawn, your survival brain kicked in. The devil didn't need to appear with red eyes and a pitchfork. He simply whispered one message over and over. If you are fully yourself, they will leave. And so you made a trade. Your identity for inclusion, your voice for validation, your truth for temporary peace. Read that again. Because the currency of control has never been violence. It's been approval. It is the illusion that if you just behave well enough, please long enough, smile hard enough, you will finally be safe. But here's the truth that breaks the chains. Approval is a leash, and it only works if you fear being free. The mask that won't come off, you don't remember the first time you put it on. The version of you that always knows what to say, that keeps the peace, that downplays your dreams so no one feels uncomfortable, that stays small enough to be liked. It's almost admirable, isn't it, how quickly you can read a room, how naturally you silence your fire when you sense it might threaten someone else's comfort. But tell me this, if they only like the version of you that isn't real, are you even liked, or are you just tolerated? Worse, are you just useful? There is a difference between being loved and being useful. There's a difference between respect and convenience, but approval rarely distinguishes the two. Because approval, by nature, is conditional. It says, you are good if, you are accepted when, you are valuable as long as, and the devil feeds on those conditions. He sharpens them. He multiplies them until you become a master of bending yourself into shapes that earn praise while forgetting the shape you were born to be. You weren't born to be a mirror. You were born to be a fire, but mirrors are safer. They reflect what others want to see, and fires, they burn things down. Which one have you chosen? Drifting by design, Napoleon Hill called it drifting, the condition of a mind that has surrendered its power to outside forces. When you drift, you don't steer your life. You react to it. You follow trends. You wait for permission. You say yes when you mean no. You stay quiet when your soul is screaming. The devil loves a drifter because a drifting mind is an obedient one. And what causes drifting? Fear, but not fear of death or failure or pain. No, something worse, a fear of disapproval. Think about it. Most people don't build lives. They build costumes. They build identities out of Instagram, job titles, and curated smiles. They become characters in a story someone else wrote just to be applauded. They wake up every day not asking, "What do I want?" but instead, "What do they want from me today?" And then they obey. That's not ambition. That's slavery. That's drifting dressed in achievement. That's approval wearing a Rolex. The prison is mental, but the damage is real. There are no visible chains. You can leave the room. You can switch jobs. You can move to another city. But if your sense of self is still tied to their opinions, you're still in the cage. The devil's brilliance is this: he doesn't need to imprison your body. He just needs you to believe that being disliked means you've done something wrong. He doesn't punish you. He gets you to punish yourself. So every time you feel that inner knowing rise, every time your truth wants to speak, every time your soul offers you a path, you second guess, you hesitate, you smile instead. You've become the prison guard of your own potential. And the tragedy is not that you've done this. The tragedy is that you think it's noble. You think it's mature. You think it's necessary. You call it being professional, humble, or normal. But none of those words mean anything if they cost you your truth. The first step out now comes the break. Not a break with the world. Not rebellion for rebellion's sake. But a break with the idea that you owe people a version of yourself they approve of. You don't. And the moment you stop chasing approval, you'll see how much of your life was constructed around fear. Fear of judgment. Fear of loss. Fear of being misunderstood. But here's the holy moment. The people who misunderstand you were never meant to understand you. They are not your mirror. They are not your measure. They are not your master. Let them go, because no one else gets to grade your soul. Not your parents, not your friends, not your followers, not your culture. No one. The moment you internalized it, truly, viscerally, you become sovereign. And the devil loses one more pawn. Echoing silence. Let this sentence sit in your bones. Your real life begins where your performance ends. The applause you crave will never fill the silence you betray. Because every time you betray yourself for approval, you reinforce the lie that you are not enough as you are. And every time you reinforce that lie, the devil grins. He doesn't need to control you directly. He just needs you to doubt your own authority. But the war ends here, not with noise, but with a decision. You don't need their applause. You need your permission. Reflected echo, symbolic loop. You were not born to perform. You were born to burn. Read that again. Some of your deepest wounds were never spoken aloud. They weren't carved by fists or insults. They were carved in absence. The silence when you needed to be seen. The look of discomfort when you showed too much emotion. The shift in energy when your curiosity was too loud, your truth too raw, your joy too wild. That's when it began. The drift, not into laziness, not into failure, but into obedience. Because you learned quickly, painfully, that acceptance was a currency and being your full self was too expensive. So you cut away pieces of your spirit to fit the mold. You locked away the questions, the anger, the art, the defiance. You quieted your intuition, not because it was wrong, but because it wasn't welcome. The first detour from self, you don't always remember the moment it happened. Sometimes it was a parent who said, "Don't be so sensitive." Sometimes a teacher who rewarded silence more than wonder. Sometimes it was just the coldness of a room when you brought your full soul into it and felt it freeze. Whatever it was, you got the message. That part of you is too much. That part of you makes people uncomfortable. That part of you is dangerous. And so you did what every child does to survive. You adapted. You performed. You pleased. You dimmed your own signal so the world wouldn't shut you out. But what you didn't know was that every time you did that, you were making a silent agreement, a soul contract. I will hide my truth in exchange for love. Read that again. Drifting is inherited, not born. Napoleon Hill warned of it in Outwitting the Devil. Children are not born with the habit of drifting. They acquire this habit from the wrong educational influence or the lack of proper guidance. The devil doesn't start with adults. He starts early with repetition. He uses teachers, parents, friends, media, not to brutalize you, but to condition you. Condition you to avoid risk, to fear failure, to equate being liked with being good. And once that association is installed in your subconscious, the devil doesn't have to work hard anymore. You'll do it yourself. You'll self-edit before speaking. You'll shrink before trying. You'll punish yourself before anyone else gets the chance to. This is how drifting begins, not with laziness, but with early fear. The building of the false self, there's a name for this identity we construct for approval. Psychologists call it the false self. It's who you became to be loved, but it's not who you are. And while it may have protected you as a child, it is destroying you as an adult. Because no matter how successful your false self becomes, it is still a mask. And masks by nature are exhausting, especially when you wear them for so long. You forget what your real face looks like. You begin to confuse achievement with authenticity. You begin to think that love must be earned. You begin to mistake performance for presence. This is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. Because the longer you carry the false self, the heavier it gets, and the further you drift from who you really are. Childhood doesn't end when you grow up. You may be 30, 40, 55 years old, but if the approval you seek still sounds like a parent's voice, you are still following childhood rules. And childhood rules were never meant to govern an adult life. What do I mean? I mean, you still hesitate to speak boldly because you remember being scolded for talking back. You downplay your intelligence because you were told not to make others feel dumb. You avoid success because you were taught that ambition is arrogant. You silence your intuition because they labeled it overreacting. That's not personality. That's programming. That's the crooked hallway of memory, where every step you take is bent by the invisible walls of someone else's beliefs. The question is, how long will you keep walking hallways that weren't built for your truth? What you gave up to fit in, take a breath and ask yourself honestly, what part of you had to die? To be accepted? Was it your creativity? Your loudness? Your spiritual hunger? Your refusal to be mediocre? Your need for solitude? Your voice? Because somewhere back there, you made a choice. You chose to be understood over being authentic. You chose approval over alignment. You chose comfort over clarity. And it worked temporarily, but you're here now. And you know it's not working anymore. You can feel it. The hunger, the ache, the pull, that silent rebellion inside you, screaming, I'm done performing. That's not ego. That's your original self trying to come home. How the devil uses your past against you. One of the most insidious tricks the devil plays is using your past to define your future. He will whisper, they didn't accept you before. Why would they now? You'll be alone if you change. If you stop being the nice one, you'll be hated. You're too old to start over. This is just who you are. But these are not facts. These are lies. And the more emotionally familiar they feel, the more dangerous they become. Because what feels safe is often just what's rehearsed. And you rehearse smallness, not because it's your truth, but because it kept you from being punished. But now, that same safety is killing your future. You are not here to repeat your programming. You are here to transcend it. The choice before you? Here's the raw truth. Every day you either honor your past fears or you break them. There is no in between. There is no just getting by without consequence. Because when you delay your truth, you drift. And when you drift, you obey the devil, not with chains, but with silence. You are not a child anymore. You are not in danger. You are not dependent on their love, their opinion, their applause. You are free. But freedom, like truth, is earned through confrontation. You must confront the memories that molded you, the rooms that rewrote you, the moments that silenced you, and not to stay trapped in, but to reclaim what you left behind. Reflective echo, symbolic loop. You don't need their permission to remember who you were before the world told you to behave. Read that again. Success can become a more seductive prison than failure ever was, because failure confronts you. But success, false success, comforts you. It feeds you praise, metric, compliments. It makes you believe you're free because you're admired. It rewards you for continuing the performance. It claps when you hit the mark and punishes you with silence when you show your truth. Welcome to the echo chamber, where everyone claps with a mask, but no one knows the face underneath. Where you're celebrated for your image, but forgotten for your soul. And the terrifying part? You start to forget too. The performance that never ends, you built a version of yourself that works. It speaks well. It dresses right. It achieves what it's supposed to. It motivates others. It stays sharp. People admire this version. They follow it. They buy from it. They quote it. But deep down, you're exhausted. Because even though you played the part flawlessly, you know you're performing. And that inner knowing is relentless. It keeps you up at night. It whispers between the applause. It asks questions no one else dares to ask. Why am I still not fulfilled? Why does this all feel so empty? Why do I feel more alone the more people admire me? You are not crazy. You are not ungrateful. You are not broken. You're just done lying to yourself. Applause is addictive, but hollow. Here's the truth no one tells you. Approval feels like love, but it's not. It's recognition, it's attention, it's affirmation. But it's not the same as being seen. Because to be truly seen, you must be willing to be disliked. And when your life has been built on applause, being disliked feels like death. But it's not death, it's detox. It's the withdrawal symptoms of stepping out of the echo chamber. It hurts, it confuses, it terrifies, but it frees you. Because applause can't feed the soul. It can only feed the ego. And you were never born to serve your ego. You were born to reveal your essence. When success becomes a distraction, there comes a point in every driven person's life when the very thing that once fueled them now distracts them. You wanted success so you could prove yourself. You wanted to help, to build, to inspire. But somewhere along the way, the approval became the goal. And now, without even realizing it, you don't create from truth. You create from expectation. You don't speak your soul. You speak what will work. You become an algorithm of approval, not a living, breathing channel of wisdom. And the worst part? The world rewards you for this. The devil makes sure of it. Because if he can keep you addicted to validation, he never needs to chain your hands. He just has to keep you afraid of what will happen if you stop clapping with the crowd. The slow starvation of the soul. Have you ever succeeded and still felt like something was missing? That's not a flaw in you. That's the signal that your success was built without your soul. It might have been strategic. It might have been logical. It might have been admired, but it wasn't yours. Because your truth wasn't invited to the table. Only your utility was. Read that again. You were useful, not known. And when a human being is useful but not known, their soul begins to wither. You can't cry about it. You don't even know how to explain it. But something inside you begins to hollow out. And that hollow space is where your true life is trying to be reborn. The sacred risk of being unapplauded. Every spiritual path, every legacy path has a season of being misunderstood, of silence, of solitude, of walking away from the crowd. Because if the applause is too loud, you can't hear your own knowing. Sometimes you have to lose their attention to find your alignment. And that is terrifying. Because when you've spent your whole life trying to be good, successful, impressive, valuable, choosing your truth feels like betrayal. But it's not betrayal. It's return. The return to the voice that existed before anyone clapped. The return to creation without coercion. To expression without editing. To presence without posing. And yes, that return costs something. It costs the image. It costs the noise. It costs the illusion. But what it gives you is your soul. Are you building or auditioning? Here's the question that will haunt you until you face it. Is this your life? Or is this an audition? Are you building a legacy from alignment? Or are you performing a role you hope they'll keep clapping for? Because if your self-worth rises and falls with likes, clients, subscribers, income, status, you are not building. You are auditioning. And every day you audition, you say to the world, tell me who I'm allowed to be today. That is not success. That is spiritual dependence. And the devil loves it. Because as long as you need the world to validate you, you will never become a threat to his system. The courage to burn the script. There comes a moment when the soul gives an ultimatum. Either you become who you were born to be, or you keep dying by who you've been pretending to be. No more rehearsals. No more personas. No more tailoring your truth to fit the market. Burn the script. The one they gave you. The one they praised. The one that made you successful, but not whole. Because if the script costs you your self-respect, it was never your script. If the audience demands a version of you that's only one-dimensional, they are not your audience. And if the applause only comes when you're safe, then you're no longer alive. You're just performing your own burial. Reflective echo, symbolic loop. You're not here to be admired. You're here to be real. You never sign it with a pen, but you signed it. The contract, not a piece of paper, but a posture. A quiet vow you made in the depths of your mind. I will trade parts of myself if it keeps me safe. And the devil smiled, because this is how he wins, not through force, but agreement. He waits until you're tired. He waits until you're desperate. He waits until you're afraid of losing the life you built. And then he offers you safety through compliance, a contract that says, be agreeable, and we won't abandon you. Stay small, and we won't attack you. Don't question the script, and we'll let you keep your success. But the fine print always reads, your soul is no longer yours. And the longer you obey that contract, the less alive you become. The terms of the deal. Here's what the devil offers and what you give up. He offers certainty. You give up curiosity. He offers approval. You give up integrity. He offers attention. You give up depth. He offers relevance. You give up peace. He offers survival. You give up sovereignty. And at first, it seems like a fair deal. You stay liked. You stay comfortable. You stay in control. But control is not freedom. Control is a cage with velvet bars. And your soul was not born to be caged, even in gold. The fire that destroys false agreements at some point, something inside you starts to rebel. Maybe it's a restless, maybe it's a dream that won't die. Maybe it's a rage you can't explain. Maybe it's the terrifying realization that you've never truly said what you believe out loud. That feeling, that's the fire. And the fire does not ask for permission. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't flatter. It burns. It burns the mask. It burns the contract. It burns the illusion that you must keep pleasing people to stay alive. And in that fire, the old self dies. Not the real you, but the agreed upon you, the one you built so others wouldn't leave. The version that kept you from your own power. Soul over survival. This is the axis of all transformation. The moment you choose to honor your soul, even if it costs you everything survival taught you to protect, you choose truth over image, conviction over comfort, depth over popularity, silence over noise. You stop asking, what will they think? What if I fail? What if they leave? And you start asking, what part of me is dying every time I say yes to something I don't believe in? Because that's the real danger. Not losing it, but losing yourself. And no success, no status, no security is worth that loss. Not anymore. The hidden cost of staying safe, every false yes you've given, cost something real. Every moment you held your tongue, every hour you spent nodding when you wanted to scream, every day you spent fulfilling a role that no longer fits. It wasn't just wasted time. It was debt, spiritual debt, and it's collecting interest. You feel it as anxiety, as tension, as guilt, as fatigue. That's your soul demanding repayment. Not in punishment, but in alignment. And the only way to pay it back is to stop pretending, stop posturing, stop diluting, stop contracting yourself to meet their comfort level. You are not here to be palatable. You are here to be pure. Burn the signature. You don't need to rewrite the contract. You need to burn it. You need to draw a line that says, I will no longer betray myself to be included. I will no longer lie in the name of peace. I will no longer abandon my knowing to keep you comfortable, even if it costs me, my reputation, my followers, my friends, my past life. Because if all of those things were built on a version of me that isn't real, then none of them were mine to begin with. You only own what you built from truth. Everything else is rented, and the rent is your soul. The walls will shake. Make no mistake. When you break the contract, your world will shake. You might lose people. You might lose praise. You might lose traction. But what you gain? Clarity, peace, presence, power. You'll stop feeling split. You'll stop second guessing. You'll stop waking up with the ache of, is this even me anymore? Because you'll know. You'll know every word you speak is yours. Every decision is yours. Every silence is sacred, not strategic. This is not recklessness. This is reclamation. You are reclaiming the life you were meant to build. Before the world taught you how to perform, a new contract once the old one is burned. You'll write a new one. This one doesn't need ink. It only needs decision. It sounds like, I honor my soul more than I fear your reaction. I trust that truth will protect me more than approval ever did. I refuse to be a hostage to who I used to be. This is the moment of becoming, not a better version of yourself, but a truer one. Because greatness was never about addition. It was about removal of fear, of guilt, of performance, of anything that convinced you you weren't already enough. Reflective echo, symbolic loop. The only thing standing between you and your real life is the lie you agreed to live. Burn it. There's a silence that stings and one that saves. You felt both. The silence after speaking your truth and being met with distance. The silence of being unfollowed, dismissed, ignored. The silence of saying no for the first time and watching people vanish. But there's another silence, deeper, still, sacred. The silence that arrives when you no longer perform, when you no longer chase, when you no longer check for applause. That silence is not absent. It is arrival. It's where the noise ends and your real voice begins. And that silence will reveal something many never want to admit. Much of the approval you spent your life chasing was never pure. Approval has an agenda. Approval feels warm, but it's rarely unconditional. It often carries an invisible contract. Act like this, and we'll love you. Speak like this, and we'll support you. Stay in this role, and we'll keep you around. But take a step outside the lines and feel the temperature change. What you thought was love was compliance in disguise. They weren't clapping for you. They were clapping for the version of you that played by their rules. And the moment you stopped, so did their support. That's not betrayal. That's clarity. And that clarity, no matter how much it hurts, is a gift. Because nothing poisons the soul faster than chasing love that was never real. The room with no doors. Imagine a room. No doors. No exits. No distractions. Just mirrors facing every direction. That room is your soul. And most people spend their lives avoiding it. They fill the silence with noise. They fill the space with others. They fill their calendars, their feeds, their minds with anything but themselves. Why? Because in that room, the truth echoes loudly. And if you built your life on pleasing others, that echo can be unbearable. But if you stay, if you sit in the stillness long enough, something breaks open, not in pain, but in power. Because the voice you finally hear in that room is yours, unfiltered, unapologetic, unedited. And in that moment, you realize you don't need their approval. You never did. The poison of approval is subtle. Here's what makes it so hard to detect. It looks like support. It sounds like encouragement. It even wears the clothes of love. But it teaches you to perform, not to be. And the more you receive it, the more you fear losing it. Until one day, your choices are no longer based on truth. They're based on preservation. You don't ask, what's right for me? You ask, what will they think? And when your life becomes an answer to their question, you vanish. That's the devil's genius. He doesn't need to destroy you. He just needs to distract you with the right kind of praise. The collapse is mercy. So what happens when you stop seeking it? The collapse, the withdrawal, the detox, the death of the persona you spent years polishing. Yes, it's terrifying. Yes, it's painful. But it's also necessary because approval is a drug. And detoxing from it is what brings you back to your soul. You'll feel emptier. You'll feel invisible. You'll feel like the world isn't watching anymore. And that's when you'll start to see you've never been more free. Because for the first time, you're not being observed. You're being you. Not for them. Not for likes. Not for legacy. But because breathing your truth is now the only air you can survive on. What was underneath the approval? Here's the haunting question. What did they actually love about you? Was it your silence? Your obedience? Your usefulness? Your productivity? Your ability to regulate their emotions? Because if the version of you they celebrated depended on you abandoning parts of yourself, then that was never love. That was transaction. And you don't owe your soul to transactions anymore. You don't owe your creativity to shallow praise. You don't owe your convictions to your followers. You don't owe your peace to people who love you when you stay quiet. The ones who truly see you. They never require your performance in the first place. Freedom is quiet. Don't be fooled. Freedom isn't loud. It's not flashy. It's not always celebrated. Real freedom? It sounds like, no, thank you. That's not for me. I don't believe that anymore. I'd rather be misunderstood than dishonest. Freedom is stillness. It's walking away from the rooms you once begged to be in. It's letting go of admiration that only existed for the mask you wore. It's finding peace in being unrecognized because now, finally, you recognize yourself. And when you can sit in that quiet, when the applause has faded, when there are no more eyes to impress, you'll hear the voice that's been waiting for decades to speak. and it will say, welcome back. The death before the return, every transformation demands a symbolic death, a death of who you pretended to be, a death of the identity that approval built, a death of the addiction to being seen, and that death will cost you everything false. But what remains is real. What remains is unshakable. What remains doesn't need applause. What remains is what you'll build the rest of your life on, and no one can take that from you, because it was never theirs to validate. It was yours to reclaim. Reflective echo, symbolic loop. You don't need to be seen to be real. You just need to stop hiding from yourself. The applause is gone now. The stage is empty. The lights have dimmed. The crowd has moved on. And in the silence, something ancient awakens. Not sadness, not regret, but power. Because this is where sovereignty begins. Not in victory, but in ruins. The ruins of who you used to be. The roles you outgrew. The masks you buried. The mirrors you shattered. And from those ruins, you build the throne. Not to sit above anyone, but to sit fully within yourself. The throne was always inside you. They told you power came from success, from approval, from status, from being better, faster, louder. They lied. Power has nothing to do with domination and everything to do with possession of your mind, of your emotions, of your voice, of your choices. Self-possession is self-sovereignty, and it can't be granted by others. It must be reclaimed. Because somewhere along the way, you gave pieces of yourself away to be liked, to be understood, to be enough, to survive now. You gather them back. You no longer wait to be crowned. You remember, you were born crowned, but the crown isn't made of gold. It's made of ruins, every part of you that had to break. So your truth could emerge. The cycle is overlooked closely. You've lived this cycle before. Build a version of yourself to gain approval. Achieve success based on that version. Realize it isn't enough. Collapse inward. Rebirth begins, and the cycle starts again, unless you break it. But not this time. This time, you're not rebuilding for the world. You're remembering for yourself. You're not reaching for a new role. You're returning to the core. This time, you don't need to be seen, because now you see yourself fully, finally, fiercely. What sovereignty feels like, it's not what you were taught. Sovereignty isn't pride. It's peace. It's the moment you say no without guilt. It's waking up and not needing to be needed. It's no longer flinching at silence, solitude, or being misunderstood. It's the strength to say, I don't perform anymore. I don't dilute anymore. I don't betray myself for belonging anymore. Because now your belonging starts within. You've become your own source. That means the world can shift and you remain still. People can leave and you remain full. The applause can fade and your voice grows louder. This is what it means to rule yourself. The world doesn't get a vote. Once you return to your core, the world becomes what it always was, a mirror, not a master. People's opinions reflect their fears, not your worth. Their praise reflects their preferences, not your truth. Their disapproval reflects their discomfort, not your path. And so, you stop asking, do they like me? Do they approve? Am I accepted? You ask one thing, am I aligned? Because alignment is stronger than applause. It's deeper than visibility. It's quieter than fame and infinitely more lasting. The world doesn't get a vote anymore. Not on your identity, not on your value, not on your becoming. You've revoked their access. The power of non-negotiation. There is a sacred violence to becoming sovereign. Not the violence of harm, but of non-negotiation. There are now things you will not tolerate. Disrespect, self-abandonment, shrinking, people-pleasing, performing. Not because you're hard, but because you're whole. You've seen what happens when you negotiate your essence. You've watched your peace bleed. You've watched your joy dim. You've watched your body ache from saying yes when you meant no. Now, your standards are spiritual, not strategic. You no longer convince, persuade, or beg. You radiate, and those meant to walk with you will feel it. Those who can't will fall away. Either way, you remain. Sovereignty in every space. This isn't just a mindset. It's a way of moving. You take this power into your work, your relationships, your choices. In business, it sounds like, I only build from alignment. In love, it sounds like, I'd rather be alone than perform again. In creativity, it sounds like, I create what I'm called to, not what the market demands. In identity, it sounds like, I am not here to be digestible. I'm here to be true. You've shifted. You're not looking to fit in anymore. You're not looking to rise above. You're looking to root down. Because the deeper your roots, the wider your reach, you don't chase legacy anymore. You become it. The final return, this was never about rejecting others. It was about returning to yourself. The voice that used to whisper, "You're too much," now says, "You're ready." The world that once silenced you no longer holds your voice. You've left the echo chamber. You've stopped auditioning. You've burned the contract. You've embraced the silence. You remembered your throne. And now you rule your life with grace, with force, with truth.